Hi, it's Lucy Carlson here, trying my hand at the live stream thing again. We did this a few weeks ago and thought I'd give it another shot. So we're going to go ahead and once again do a reading of a vintage Nintendo Power issue. This is issue number 168 with a date of, geez, what is the date on this one? Guess we'll find out when we start reading it, right? Okay. So here's the cover art. This features the game Golden Sun. That, of course, was a series of RPGs that Nintendo made back in the day. Got some other ads here for, Splinter Cell, Lost Kingdoms, Army Men. And you got the logos for the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube, which, of course, were the systems Nintendo had out at the time. Got a picture of Arakato from Castlevania there. So this would have been around the time Aria of Sorrow came out for the Game Boy Advance. They always had the subscription offers here. This time around they're trying to offer you like a Nintendo Power Player's Guide for Pokemon Sapphire, Pokemon Ruby. Then also there's an ad for Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Here's the other part of that ad right there. Ad here for Wolverine's Revenge, X-Men game. Table of contents. This is May 2003. Then there's an ad here for The Lost Vikings. That was an old Super Nintendo game that they reissued on Game Boy Advance. Apparently a Blizzard company that went on to do a lot of great things. And I believe when they put out The Lost Vikings on the Super Nintendo originally, the company was called Interplay. And they were the company that put out things like Rock and Roll Racing as well. There's an ad for Freestyle Metal X, and then also table of contents. Got an ad for Castlevania Aria of Sorrow right there. Here we have the Player's Pulse. This is where people would send in their letters. And of course, I got a few letters. The only Nintendo Powers that I kept are the ones that I had a letter in. I'll see if I can find mine in here. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it would have been about. Someone asking about, Metroid, if Samus takes her suit off. Someone asking about the Game Boy Advance e-reader, which of course bombed notoriously in America, but was a much bigger hit overseas. Yeah, it looks like I wrote a letter here about, what games would and wouldn't work with the Game Boy Player accessory for the Nintendo GameCube. There's also some fan envelope art here. Nintendo would always accept that stuff and display it in the magazine. Over here we have some, Animal Crossing music that you could do, plus more envelope art. Got an ad for a Dragon Ball game here. They had this really silly Dragon Ball ad campaign where they tried to show like real life people with Dragon Ball style hair. Whether that's an effective ad campaign or not, I don't know, but it's pretty hilarious. More Player's Pulse art here. You got Mario RPG, Shadow the Hedgehog. Got an ad for Mega Man and Bass, which of course was a GBA game that was originally a Japanese-only Super Nintendo game. Got the rankings for the games with people voting in the Player's Poll contest. Got a nice big half-page ad here for Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which has come up a few times. Here's more of the charting stuff, plus ads for the GameCube, the Game Boy Player, a few choice games that were coming out at the time. You got this thing called the Game Watch where they would advertise and promote upcoming games. So a few things here and there. I'm not going to read off every single one of those. Game Watch continued, more stuff. Game Watch continued again. This section's a little longer than I remember it being. And then they have like a list of upcoming games. It used to be they had like dates next to the upcoming games, give you an idea of when they would be out, but they kind of stopped doing that because games kept getting delayed and things. Like I remember the Nintendo 64 Zelda game, originally called Zelda 64, was supposed to come out in spring of 97. Didn't come out till fall of 98, by which time it was called Ocarina of Time. Got an ad for an Operation Desert Storm game right there. They have this power on section that has some secrets and things like that. Earlier they had the counselor's corner section where people needed help with certain things in certain games. I believe they discontinued that section by this point, so I guess this was sort of a successor column. They also had a similar thing called classified information that had secrets, so I guess this is sort of a successor column to both of those. Also an ad for a puzzle fighter game. Here's an ad for Nintendo Online plus the e-reader and some of the games that were popular at the time. It's interesting to note that probably for like the first 100 issues or so, Nintendo Power did not do like regular commercial ads, unless it was like stuff directly by Nintendo. But by this point, they had started incorporating a few other ads into the magazines. Yeah. Here's a spread for Golden Sun. Again, the cover story. I don't know if I ever actually played one of these Golden Sun games all the way through, but that's something I might have to go back and revisit. I think they're actually playable on that Nintendo Switch service where you can play the retro games on the older consoles. Looks like this is the Golden Sun world map here. This is an ad for, what is this? Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. Yeah, Army Men. I don't know how many of those games they've made, but there were a ton of them. More Army Men. Yeah, Army Men section continued. And here we go with the Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. This game, of course, noteworthy among Castlevania games because it was actually set in the future rather than the past, although it still retains the sort of classic Castlevania look, weapons, and so forth. And there's some interesting plot twists with Soma Cruz, the main character, but I'm not going to get into spoiler territory in this review. But the big noteworthy thing with that game is you could actually... Oh, we're getting a message there. Hello, Taylor Live. All right, hello back. Thanks for tuning in. So yeah, we got some continuations here with that Castlevania ad. Oh. Hey there, buddy, says Chris. Hey there, back. And most Nintendo Power issues had a poster in them. This one's got an Aria of Sorrow poster. That's actually pretty cool. I'm half tempted to rip that out and hang it up. Wouldn't look half bad on my YouTube wall, right? There's an ad here for a game called Ultimate Muscle. I think that was a cartoon at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, catch it on the Fox box. That was like the successor to the Fox Kids, so yeah, it must be those. Here's a game called Ikaruga. This was like a scrolling shooter game. I don't think I ever actually played this, but I remember it being talked about a lot at the time. Here's an ad for one of the Rayman games. Your place is looking like a man cave, laugh out loud. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but thanks for tuning in either way. Here's more of that Tom Clancy Splinter Cell. It looks like this is one of the games where you connect your GameCube to your Game Boy Advance. They had a connector cable that could do that with a few games. More of the Splinter Cell stuff. Got a section here called Fundamentals. Yeah, DigiPen. This was like, I think this was like a game design school or something. I have no idea if that still exists. Okay, it's a compliment. Okay, good to know. So here's more of that DigiPen stuff. Okay, it looks like classified information actually did still exist as a section here. There's Robotech. They got a section on one of the Rocky games they made. Gonna cheat now, it says, instead of gonna fly now. Unlocking modes, codes. So a game here called Dead to Rights also. I know that name, but it's not a game I ever played. They got some, Metroid Fusion stuff, as well as a few other games as well. Got an ad for a baseball game over here. Yeah, classified information, special report, got more stuff on more games there. This is all for a game called Red Faction 2. Not something I'd ever played, unfortunately. Lost Kingdoms 2. I've never played any Lost Kingdoms games, but again, as with Golden Sun, certainly curious about that. I like looking at the old ads in those magazines when I was a kid. I do too. That's why we go through every single page, so we don't miss anything. Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. This game, of course, at the time was really controversial because of the whole cell shading art style. I think it looked pretty nice, honestly, and the game certainly has, aged fairly well. More of the Wind Waker here. I know they did a remake of Wind Waker for the Wii U. It'd be nice if they'd reissue that on the Switch. Got an ad for a Hulk game here. So this is 2003. This would presumably be based on the Ang Lee movie that had Eric Bana playing Bruce Banner, the Hulk. There's even an ad here. See the movie only in theaters, 6/20/03. I didn't see that movie in the theaters, but I did see it on home video many years later. Yeah, 007 Nightfire. One in a long line of James Bond games. Of course, GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 will always be the king there. But there are a few decent successor Bond games, so it's nice to see Nintendo Power gave those coverage as well. Here's an ad for the e-reader accessory. Again, this thing was massive in Japan, but it pretty much bombed in America. You could buy like a 5-pack of cards, scan them, and play NES games. What do we have here? We have Clue Clue Land. Interesting trivia. The rupee sprite from Legend of Zelda actually appeared in Clue Clue Land before it appeared in The Legend of Zelda. We also have Donkey Kong 3, the lesser-known James Bond. I'm sorry. I'm still in a James Bond state of mind after that last article. This was the lesser-known sequel to Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., and it starred a character named Stanley the Bugman. It's one of the more forgotten entries in that series, but I do think it deserves a little extra exposure than it tends to get. And of course, we have Golf, the original NES golf game simply entitled Golf. When I was a little kid at my grandmother's house, we actually had an NES, and there was a copy of this there, and I played this to death. I mean, there's only one course, you can only aim in 45-degree increments, and it was unabashedly frustrating at times, but I certainly had a lot of fun with this one. They even give you hints for all 18 holes there. Got a Game Boy Advance SP Players Poll Contest. It doesn't look like, it looks like the ad's been ripped out of here, so I probably signed up for this contest when I was a kid. I say when I was a kid, I think I was probably about 18 when this issue came out. Then we have the Nintendo Power Awards. They would do this every year. There were some games that originally came out on the original PlayStation. I wish we could get on the new PlayStation. Nice to see Nintendo was still mentioning the NES in the 2000s. Absolutely. And they still have NES games available on the Nintendo Switch Online service, so they certainly have not forgotten that era of their gaming history, and I'm very happy to see that. So yeah, this is the Nintendo Power Awards, which they did every year. Some of the winners right there. You got things like Best Fighting Game, Best Voice Talent, Best Musical Score, Best Sound. More awards. I mean, they even have a Worst Hair category. In this case, that award went to some Britney Spears game. Okay, Epic Center. Epic Center, so this was like, RPGs and, action-adventure RPG type games. Yeah, Mother 1 and 2. This is a game that had the first two Earthbound games on one Game Boy Advance cartridge. Sadly, that never made it to America, which would have been nice to have. Not only to have those games in America, conveniently available, but also portable. Mother 3, the third game in the series, still hasn't gotten an official English translation, but there are a lot of fan patches out there for emulators and things. You got an ad for a Lufia game over here. I don't think I've ever played one of those either. Yeah, this section here continued. I'm guessing this is like more Lufia coverage. More Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. When did they stop making Nintendo Power? Only 17, so I didn't really get to read it. I believe the last issue came out in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Now, when Nintendo Power first started out, it was a bi-monthly publication. There were 6 issues a year. Then it became monthly, probably around the early 90s, 12 issues a year. And that continued for several years. Then a company called Future US took over the publication. Probably would have been around 2007, 2008 or so. And when they took over the publication, it actually became a 13-issue-a-year series because they did a bonus holiday issue. But the last issue, I believe that came out in 2012. The original Nintendo Power that came out in 1988 had Super Mario Bros. 2 on the cover, and the last issue had Mario on the cover, and it was actually an homage to the original cover of the first issue. So look that up if you get a chance. Do you remember the Power Glove? Yes, I do. I never owned one or actually played one, but it was infamously featured in the movie The Wizard, so I'm certainly aware of the Power Glove. Anyway, back to this. We have Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. They tell you here about like what Pokemon are exclusive to which versions of the game. Pokemon games almost always come out with more than one version, and in this case, it was no different. So like some were exclusive to Sapphire you couldn't get in Ruby, and vice versa. Yeah. More coverage here, a little bit about more of the Pokemon, the gym leaders, some of the stuff you have to do on the quest. And these games have since been remade as, I believe it's Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for the Nintendo 3DS. It would be nice if we could get a Switch remake of those too. More Pokemon. More Pokemon still. That's Flannery. She's one of the gym leaders. They talk about, Pokemon e-cards. Again, going back to the e-reader and how that was compatible with certain things. Over here they got like some, Animal Crossing bulletin section. My ex-girlfriend was crazy about Animal Crossing. I've never really sat down and played one of those, but maybe I'll need to at some point. Got coverage here for a Yu-Gi-Oh game. Again, I was always more of a Pokemon card guy than a Yu-Gi-Oh card guy, so not a franchise I ever really got into, but maybe something that I need to look a little more into. I believe it's still being produced. Yeah, more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff on this page. Here's more stuff on DigiPen, the whole... Yeah. Trust me, Animal Crossing is peak. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Like I said, my ex-girlfriend seemed to have a lot of fun playing like the newer one that was on Switch a few years ago. But yeah, this DigiPen's like a game design studio. I was actually planning on going to college for game design, but ultimately decided not to. Probably for the best, because I know when Disney took over Lucasfilm, like LucasArts went under and had to lay a bunch of people off. Oh. Hello? Okay. Hello back. Who's that? Jared Runner? Okay, hello and thank you for tuning in. We have a section here called Tidal Wave, T-I-T-L-E. This is just about some, upcoming new release games. We got something called Dakar 2, Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, Transworld Surf Next Wave. I know Superman games often have an infamous reputation as some of the worst ones out there. Superman 64 is often considered one of the worst games of all time. Not familiar with this particular title, though. Yeah, you got Tube Slider, The Muppets, Ninja 5-0, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I did not know there was a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon video game. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, most games that are based on movies are usually terrible, and most movies that are based on games are usually terrible. There have been a few exceptions over the years, but you never know what you're going to get. Let's say that same Superman game, they had a Game Boy Advance version, also X2, X-Men. They got some challenges over here. They had a section called the Arena where you could try to accomplish challenges. Then, of course, you had to take like a photo of your TV set with the console to prove that you weren't using a Game Genie or any sort of game enhancer. What are some of the challenges here? Looks like there's a challenge for the flight contest in the Wind Waker. Yeah, and then they even let people write in with some of their custom challenges as well. Like, Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, get through without a shield, weapon, frame, or healing item. Complete Ocarina of Time Master Quest without using the L targeting feature. And then we get to the section where they actually rate the games. This section has changed a few times over the years. I know they were rating out of 5 at one point, then they were rating out of 10, and I think they went back to rating out of 5 or vice versa. This section used to be called, George and Rob, and it was just two guys giving their opinions on the game, but that was infamously unpopular with readers. So we got ratings for, Ikaruga, Red Faction 2, James Bond 007 Nightfire, the latter of which being for the Game Boy Advance, the other two being for the GameCube. But this is nice because you have, a few paragraphs of review, but then you have actual compliments and criticisms from the reviewers at Nintendo Power here. Like for James Bond Nightfire, someone here says, Nightfire has flaws, including inaccurate controls, blocky graphics, and a tendency to use the same 3 voice samples all over and over again. All that aside, it's actually kind of, we're George and Rob. There actually is one of the commenters on here named George, so I wonder if that's the George and Rob guy from back in the day. Not totally sure there. I know Nintendo Power's staff did change a little over the years, but they did have a few guys that were regular staples over the years. Trying to rip off Siskel and Ebert. That's entirely possible, because this certainly would have been around the peak of Siskel and Ebert's popularity. That George and Rob section would have been like the early 90s, like right when they were probably the most popular movie review guys there are. I mean, hell, those guys are dead now, and they're probably still the 2 most popular movie review guys. And we got smaller reviews here for other games that didn't quite get the super in-depth coverage. You can take a look there and see some of the stuff that's been promoted. On that side, got a few more. A few more on this side, and they've got a list of the reviewers and what some of their favorite genres of games are. They got something called the Nindex, where you can look up different things that are in the issue, a list of titles currently available for the GameCube, and basically, how you can contact Nintendo and get the info that you need. When I was a kid, I wrote a ton of letters to Nintendo, and they actually replied to just about all of them. I think I've still got those letters over at my parents' house somewhere. I might have to do a video on those at some point. We always have sort of a next issue preview at the end of each issue. So here's a look at some of the stuff that would be in the next issue after this. The issue I'm reading now is the May 03, so this would be the June 03 issue that they'd be promoting there. An ad here for a Burnout game. Again, a series that I'm not too super familiar with. In the back here, you've got an ad for the player's guides for Zelda the Wind Waker and Pokemon Ruby Sapphire. And then there's an Ikaruga ad on the other side. Nintendo Power was infamous because they put out 2 player's guides for most of the games. I mean, they both covered both games, but one section was generally the main quest, and the other section was like a post-game Pokedex type thing. On the back, there's like a PSA that says Verb. I know there were a lot of these, educational PSAs around this time in the early 2000s when this came out. If you look at the spine, you can kind of see Link there as he appears in the Wind Waker. Nintendo did this thing for a few years where they'd have issues line up so the spines would form a picture. And there were a few times they screwed it up so the issues would look laughably bad if you actually put them together like that. I know there was a time, probably around 1996, where they would just have the corners stapled rather than bound like they are here. So anyway, that about does it for this issue. I'm going to show some of the other magazines I've got here as well that I'll probably be doing live readings like this for in the future. So let's take a look and see what I got here. Okay, for Nintendo Power, I've got this one. This will be the next one I do. This is July 2005, issue 193. We have one here for the, it's got the Game Boy port of Final Fantasy III featured on the cover. Again, that's Final Fantasy III, the actual Japanese game, not the American Final Fantasy III that's actually Final Fantasy VI. Got one here with the Fire Emblem on the cover. Kind of funny, those Super Smash Bros. Games took characters from a lot of famous Nintendo franchises and pitted them against each other. But I think most people, it was the other way around with Smash Brothers in America, because a lot of people first discovered those characters through Smash Brothers and then played Fire Emblem later, because a lot of those early Fire Emblem games didn't come out in America. Then we have one here with Super Mario Galaxy on the cover. Now, my subscription to Nintendo Power lasted from about 1991 to about 2008. So I subscribed for about 17 years, and I had a lot of issues. Again, most of them I gave away. I really only kept the ones that I actually had letters printed in. And I think I might even be missing one of the ones that I had a letter in, but if I find that, I'll certainly add that to the list. I also got a few other non-Nintendo Power magazines here as well. I've got a few issues of the Star Wars Insider, so might throw these in there in a later one. And keep in mind, these Star Wars Insiders are pretty old, because they came out around 2006, give or take. So that was before Disney took over the franchise and rendered the old EU non-canon. So don't be surprised if I end up doing readings of these in a later video. Got a few music magazines here as well. This is Rock Candy, which is a UK music magazine. Got some pretty cool stuff. Also got another Star Wars Insider here that I missed before. And there's also, this isn't printed anymore, but there's also a Vegas-based music magazine called Vegas Rocks. I used to be a writer for these guys back in the day, so might do a reading of these as well. Some pretty cool stuff to be had here as well if you're a rock and metal fan. Anyway, that about does it for this reading of another Nintendo Power issue. I might try to see if I can get live streams going every Saturday around noon. Probably not going to be practical every single time. Anyone have any like parting shots or last minute comments they want to add before I stop the live stream? You kind of have an idea here of what I'm trying to do. Hopefully this can increase viewership to the channel and maybe even bring in a whole new demographic. I might even try to go back to doing some video game reviews on my channel. Generally in the past, I kind of refrained from doing those because they were the longest ones to edit and put together, and generally they got the fewest views. But now that you can actually do like screenshots on the Nintendo Switch, it's probably a little more practical and easy. So anyway, I think we're pretty much nearing the end at this point, so I am going to end the live stream at this point. Thank you to those of you that tuned in, complimented, gave this a like, and I hope I'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.